We are no longer in the muzzle velocity stage of this presidency, where Donald Trump is trying things and seeing what sticks. We are in the authoritarian consolidation stage of this presidency. I want to be very clear about what I'm saying here. Donald Trump is corrupting the government. He's using it to hound his enemies, to line his pockets, and to entrench his own power. He is corrupting it the way the mafia would corrupt the industries it controlled. You could still, under mafia rule, get the trash picked up by cement, but the point of those industries had become the preservation and expansion of the mafia's power and wealth. This is what Donald Trump is doing to the government. This is what Democrats cannot fund. This is what they have to try to stop. Just in the last few months, we've watched Trump fire the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics because he didn't like the jobs data. We watched him fire the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency.
Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated.
After the agency suggested that the administration's strike on Iran only set their nuclear program back by a couple of months. We watched Trump muse about firing Jerome Powell because he wanted interest rates lower. Powell, of course, being the chair of the Federal Reserve. And now we're watching him try to fire Lisa Cook, a Federal Reserve governor, for alleged mortgage fraud. We've watched Trump sick his government on Senator Adam Schiff and Attorney General Tish James of New York. Again, allegations of mortgage fraud. I'm going to note that this is not coming after the Trump administration conducted an exhaustive review of the mortgage documents of every person serving in the executive branch right now. This is just what authoritarian governments do. They have a lot of information, they look hard enough, and everyone has either done something wrong, or even if they haven't, you can cause them a lot of trouble by just saying they have. We've watched Trump suggest the FCC should pull the broadcast licenses for NBC and ABC.
Because they are so biased and untruthful, an actual threat to our democracy.
We watched the Trump administration force the resignation of a series of Republican prosecutors because they would not drop their case against New York Mayor Eric Adams. And the Trump administration seemed to have decided it'd be more convenient to have Adams in their pocket than defending himself in court.
The Trump administration is weighing potential job offers for Mayor Adams.
John Bolton became a critic of Trump's after serving in his first administration.
No, I don't think he's competent to be president. I think that his political instincts are all about Donald Trump.
A couple of weeks ago, Trump's FBI raided his house. Chris Christie, the former New Jersey governor, criticized Trump on TV.
Donald Trump sees himself as the person who gets to decide everything. He absolutely rejects the idea that there should be separation between criminal investigations and the politically elected leader of the United States.
When I listen to Chris speak his hate, I say, oh, what about the George Washington Bridge? You know, he blamed other people, but he knew all about it. So, no, I don't know if they want to look at it. It's not for me. If they want to look at it, they can.
Trump has an enemies list, and he's using the power of the federal government to punish and harass his foes.
I do want to put the post from the weekend up because this can never be normalized. An American president sent out a tweet, essentially, it would be easy to understand it as a declaration of war against Americans living in an American city. Miles Taylor, you know better than just about anyone how reluctantly General John Kelly spoke out and did a recorded interview ahead of the interview. He warned about exactly this. He did an interview after Secretary Mattis and General Mark Milley described Donald Trump as fascistic to the core. That's a quote to Bob Woodward. He did an interview where he confirms that Donald Trump meets all the technical definitions of a fascist, but he goes further and he describes what is wrong with putting U.S. troops on the streets of American cities and warns about its impact to the military. Where are all those voices speaking out for what this does? Put that tweet up one more time. I promise this is the last day we'll do that. What does this do to the military to have a president use them as propaganda against their fellow Americans?
Well, I think, Nicole, anyone who was trying to find a moment, or perhaps anyone who was waiting for a moment to say that we crossed over that line into Trump creating a fascist environment, has got to look at the timestamp on that post and say it happened in that moment. You know, our friend Garrett Graff, the historian who you've had on before and who's been out there on the networks, you know, Garrett a couple of weeks ago said this in a fantastic post where he said, we've crossed that line, and it's not always a bright line, but if you were doubtful about that, this type of tweet says it. And you mentioned John Kelly. You know, we're not talking about a random appointee inside the government. We're talking about the guy that was by the president's side as the White House chief of staff. You talked about Jim Mattis. We're talking about his Secretary of Defense. We talk about these people who were there with him in these moments and who have attested that he had these fascistic impulses, and now we are seeing it brought to life. I think this is deeply demoralizing to the United States military. But to your question, Nicole, why aren't we seeing a lot of these folks speaking out? I think the answer is fear. I mean, when you say that a man is going to act like a fascist, you know that means he's going to engage in intimidation and threats, and he will try to destroy the lives of his critics. Now, I would like to think some more of those critics are going to come back to the fore, but I know people personally who spoke out the past couple of years who've now gone to ground because they're terrified. They've seen what's happened to me or John Bolton or Chris Krebs or go on down the list, and they don't want it to happen to them. Donald Trump is living out his authoritarian fantasies. It's happening.
The Supreme Court allows Trump to X. Like, beyond what we just learned on immigration today, we learned today that they are letting him fire an FTC commissioner, at least for now. And I want to share what Justice Amy Coney Barrett said earlier about these very rulings.
We're not deciding cases just for today. And we're not deciding cases based on the president, as in the current occupant of the office. We're deciding cases about the presidency. So we're taking each case and we're looking at the question of presidential power as it comes.
Mark Joseph Stern, what do you make of that?
No, Justice Barrett, no. For 90 years, the president was not allowed to fire FTC commissioners. It is an independent agency. The Supreme Court has unanimously held for 90 years that its members cannot be fired at will by the president. Donald Trump fired an FTC commissioner, broke that 90-year precedent, and the Supreme Court today rewarded him, allowed him to take this shocking step toward absolute control over the federal government. I really struggle to believe that the court would do this if it weren't a president with an R next to his name, and quite possibly if it weren't Donald Trump himself. I think this court is continually siding with Trump over the shadow docket in order to avoid having to even put any meat on the bones of its decisions, to explain, to justify itself to the American public, because some of these decisions are unjustifiable. They're indefensible. And so when the court issues these orders in the dead of night, when it doesn't sign the opinions, when it does all of this essentially anonymously, it allows these justices to favor Trump in a way that really contorts the law and precedent and leaves the American people wondering whatever happened to the idea of equal justice.
I think there's a lot of Americans, who voted for Donald Trump, who are waking up this morning and seeing the Supreme Court decision and saying, is this really the country that I live in? Is this really what a 6-3 Supreme Court in the United States decided? Yeah, sure, they want crime lowered. Sure, they want, illegal immigrants who are causing strife in their communities deported. But they don't want people who have been a part of the community for a long time, grandmothers, teachers, nurses, people who are institutions in our communities indiscriminately let go, getting pulled over because of the color of their skin, and getting their papers checked or whatever these ICE agents are doing, and then throwing them in the back of a car. Many of these ICE agents, as we know, we've seen the pictures, like the Trump administration can't hide from this. We've seen the videos, are not marked. They're not wearing, any sort of labeling that would suggest who they are. They look like some of them are in plain clothes with masks on, grabbing people off their motorbikes, grabbing people out of their cars. This is not what a lot of Americans signed up for when they voted for Donald Trump again. And I think that's something this administration, going into the midterms, which are 14 months away, which is not very long, is going to have to figure out, like, is this going to be a political risk? If it's something they even care about? Because right now it is. And this is not what a lot of Americans want to see.
We've watched Trump deploy the National Guard to Los Angeles and then to Washington, D.C., with more cities expected to come under federal military occupation soon.
Make your mind up on Chicago, though?
Well, we're going in. I didn't say when. We're going in.
We've watched masked ICE agents conducting raids all over the country, refusing to reveal their faces, badge numbers, or warrants.
No, you can't!
We've watched Trump systematically purge the government of inspector generals, of JAGs, of military officers, of federal prosecutors, anyone who seems like they might stand in the way of his corruption or his accumulation or exercise of power. It is an astonishing fact that the January 6th rioters have been pardoned and dozens of the Justice Department lawyers who prosecuted them have been fired. You often hear this line, "This is how authoritarianism happens." No, this is authoritarianism happening.